different concepts, but I don't want us to lose our main thought. That thought is that we're in a history of Reformation. We have 3 past witnesses to understand what this history of Reformation looks like. And these lines of Reformation are what God gave to this movement in 1989 that undergird everything else. So we've been working our way through them. And really, honestly, if someone wanted to, they could take one of these, probably expand upon it, do the whole camp meeting on one line. They are so full of information and lessons to teach us. So we're not doing that. We haven't gone to many verses or quotes. I'm just wanting us to see the structure, how the structures fit together. Because I want us to come to a couple of common understandings about what these lines teach us. So the line of Christ is the key. Success, success. So we did that one first. The end of ancient Israel, and we've plotted it here. From the birth, the first angel, with all of his baggage, Laodicean baggage, still doing the work. That didn't stop him being the greatest prophet that ever lived. But he came in with baggage. Arrival of the second. Christ in the wilderness. First temple cleansing. Transition from John to Christ. Change of leadership. Imprisonment of John. Death of John. Work of Christ. Upper room. Test of the disciples. Do they want John's kingdom or Christ's kingdom? Those who don't want Christ's kingdom leave before the shut door. And Judas dies. Testing period for the first group, disciples. Back to the church at Pentecost. All those who had not had opportunity. The Jewish nation closes its 490-year time of probation in 34 AD. The gospel goes to the third group, the Gentiles. Their reform line is a very neat model of our own. As we see these 3 groups, it has many things to teach us. I just want us to be established in the structure. We said it's watertight. You can't move anything without breaking the reform line. So when Elder Jeff teaches, there's a change in leadership at Pentecost from him to someone else, and he says he's the first angel. So the transition in leadership must be to the second angel. He's putting the second leader and the second angel at Pentecost, which lines up with Panium. There are many problems with that. On reform lines and structurally, when we understand The second angel arrived at 9/11. So who is his leader? And the second angel took over here in our most close reform line that we have to our own. Christ led that movement long before Pentecost. Then we moved to the Millerites, our Alpha history. So we know God teaches us the end from the beginning. So our beginning is going to teach us of our end. So even though it's a history of failure, and there are some differences, we can identify that this Millerite history must tell us what this history looks like. So we began to do that. Time of the end, 1798. William Miller, first angel. We have two dates here, 1840 and also the beginning of the tarrying time. Tarrying time? But in this tarrying time, just like Christ had already been identified by John, just like Elder Parminder was already speaking, Samuel Snow was already writing letters. He was already facing the opposition of the leadership. But at Boston, July 21st, that we mark as midnight, which lines up with the Sunday law on a fractal, the beginning of the swelling of the loud cry or midnight cry, Samuel Snow begins to speak in a much more authoritative fashion as a leader. And here, people have to begin to choose. Will they follow Miller or Snow? There's a change in leadership. And if they want to pass the test that's coming here, who do they have to follow? Whose leadership? Samuel Snow. We know all this is a fractal because they take the gospel to the world in 1850. So I just wanted to highlight just how foolish it is to teach that there is no probation opened, no intercession after November 9. Because they need to treat this shut door the same way. Which means for all of our pioneers, they have no intercessor. They cannot ask for forgiveness. So I brought that in. But the chief subject was to identify October 22. We know it's a close of probation, but it is for a fractal of that reform line. Some people asked questions about this Alpha history. I made the comment, I only identify two calling out in that time period. I think that people weren't questioning, it wasn't attacking. It just leads to some confusion. So I want to give a bit of clarity without going off course. The Millerites. It's the beginning of modern Israel. So you have Protestantism. Are they God's people? Protestants. Start getting into problems. It's only one Israel. Ancient Israel and modern Israel. They are not the same. They're not equal. Which is why we teach the Protestants, the daughters, become Babylon. We never say that for Adventism. Adventists go in captivity to Babylon. They do not become Babylon. We don't teach that. But we can teach that for Protestantism. They are not God's denominated people in the same way. So when God calls them out, it's different. There's differences between when God gathers his people in the Alpha history, and then when he has to sort out those original people in the Omega. Same with here. He's got to sort out the Jewish nation. So the Jewish nation here, they weren't yet his nation, his people, in that fashion. That didn't happen until he called them out of Egypt. So there are differences. When God is calling out a people, creating them out of Protestantism, then when we come to this history, and he's sorting out Israel. So without going into details, I would suggest that's one of the reasons why in the Omega history you have to have these two calls to the church. Because he has a church to deal with. And he doesn't here. So we find October 22, 1844. In primary application is 2019. There are only two groups. I don't want to go into this history. They go to the world in 1850. But that part aside, you can see this is all one group of people. This is their shut door, their test. And the change of leadership happens before that shut door. One of the complexities that we have is that there are layers to these histories. So when you come to the line of Christ, you may all be familiar with how we take that first 30 years. The training of a priest. Christ was a priest after the order of Melchizedek. So we take the first 30 years of his life. We see Christ equals a priest. 30 years of training. 1989 to 2019. 30 years of training of you as a priest. And then, ignoring our wilderness time, we go to work. So you can see in the history of Christ, there's layers. There's the key reform line, the whole end of ancient Israel, but there's also other stories. So to properly understand William Miller, I would suggest you need this whole reform line, but you also need some layers. So I want to deal with this reform line first. This is the story that has been told in this movement. I remember this being the idea people presented. William Miller is the first angel. Samuel Snow gives the midnight cry message. William Miller rejects it at the beginning, but close before October 22, what does William Miller say? What does he do? He rejected it through the history of July through August. All the leaders did. They're on the wrong side of the midnight cry message. Just prior, what do those leaders start to do? Except William Miller. We would teach that William Miller accepted the midnight cry message before October 22. I want to take us to a quote. This is 1938. END. So this is, you get this, if you're in the app, you get this from the Pioneer writings. It's not Ellen White. 54.2. We'll paraphrase a couple of paragraphs. But the chief part that we're identifying in this, and we'll take pieces from 54.2. You can read that whole passage. I'm particularly noting 55.1. But you can continue reading. Is in this document, they're quoting from a letter of William Miller that he wrote on October 6, 1844. Paraphrasing. Father Miller saw the midnight cry message going like a whirlwind. He started seeing the other leaders accept it. And he began to feel this movement must be the work of God. So on October 6, he writes a letter to Himes. Joshua Himes. And he says, Dear Brother Himes, I see a glory in the 7th month which I never saw before. The Lord showed me all this before. A year and a half ago, early 1843, I already saw some of these things, but I didn't realize the strength of it. Now I see the beauty, the harmony. It's in agreement to the scriptures. I didn't see that until today. Then he writes to Joshua Himes, if Christ does not come within 20 or 25 days, I shall feel twice the disappointment I did in the spring. So Samuel Snow is saying that Christ will come when? October 22. And William Miller says, I already understood most of this. I didn't realize it was so strong. Now I see the glory in it. I will be disappointed if Christ does not come back in 20 to 25 days. It's October 6. How many days till October 22? 16. So he knows full well that there's 16 days from when he's writing this letter to October 22. And he says, within 20 to 25, William Miller never accepted October 22. He would never accept a date. So did William Miller truly accept the Midnight Cry message? He accepted a part of it. He liked the concept, but he never accepted October 22. And he demonstrates that in this letter when he says about 20, within 20 to 25 days. That would take you to October 26 to 31. Doesn't take you to October 22. He claims to believe in the 7-month movement, but he believed that you could not set a date, a firm date. He never accepted the full message of Samuel Snow. Not before or after October 22. I think that we have been gentle on William Miller. We are because Ellen White is. But I would suggest it's a wrong narrative to say that he accepted the message just prior to October 22. And all those who truly accepted it didn't fall away. So you know there's a problem. So we have a couple of layers. This is the line of Christ. Now we're dealing with the line of the Millerites. The line of Christ says that John dies prior to the shut door. The line of the Millerites, there has 3 layers. 3 that we'll identify today. The first one says Miller rejected what message? What angel? The second angel. Miller rejected the second angel. Never accepted the Midnight Cry. Does that make sense? Never fully accepted the Midnight Cry. Elder Jeff did the same thing. Everyone thought he'd accepted the Midnight Cry. He said, I see glory in these. He said, I've been teaching Fatima for 30 years. I've already taught many of these things, but I didn't see the power in them until the Midnight Cry was presented. And then he claims to accept it. And everyone thinks he does. They think he's safe. But he rejected a part. And if you fail at a part, you fail at all. You cannot take a part. Miller took a part and rejected the date. Elder Jeff took a part and rejected not the date. He rejected the 2 streams of information. He rejected that at the very beginning. And he never changed. Both accepted a part and rejected a part. which means that both of them failed to fully accept the midnight cry. That's the story of the beginning of modern Israel. It's a story of the first angel never accepting the second angel or the midnight cry, no matter what he claims to believe. I want to read another quote. We understand there's differences. When Elder Paminda teaches, this is first angel, this is third angel. So there are some differences. If you were to come to spiritual gifts 166.1. So this is the first model of Miller. There's a second model. First spiritual gifts 166.1. She's speaking about the disappointment. She speaks about the work of Satan just after the disappointment. How people began to project into the future because I couldn't see it in the present. All of which applies today. Even though we're not failure, I just want to mark that point. There's still an application. People love to project the present into the future because they feel they can't explain the present to their satisfaction. Some are searching the Bible to build up a faith of their own, independent to the body, independent to the movement. I will tell you, that is happening today. Satan exulted, for he knew that those who broke loose from the anchor he could affect with different errors and drive about with winds of doctrine. Many who led in the first and second messages denied them, and division and scattering was throughout the body. Division and scattering was throughout the body. I saw William Miller leading men watching William Miller, manipulating him, fearing lest he should embrace the third angel's message. So we rejected the second when we build this story. There's another story. William Miller isn't struggling with the second angel. He's struggling with the third angel's message. And there's leading men who want to make sure he will not accept the third angel's message. William Miller, he starts to give in to the message. He starts to embrace it. And then human influence affects him. At last, Miller raised his voice against the light from heaven. He failed in not receiving the message which would have fully explained his disappointment. If William Miller could have seen the light of the third angel's message, many things which looked dark and mysterious to him would have been explained. So William Miller has two problems. He rejected the second angel's message, And then he rejected the third angel's message. The third angel's message could have explained what he didn't understand about the second. So I understand that the second and the third angels, they have a different relation in that reform land. Third angel comes after the close of probation. But it's the same concept. Rejected the second. The third could have given explanation of the second. And he rejects it. If he could have seen the light of the third angel's message, all the things about the second that he did not grasp could have been made clear. So we understand that there's different stories within a reform land. I've given one example of that with the history of Christ. How you have this end of ancient Israel. But then you also have this other story about the priesthood. 4 BC to 27 AD. 30 years training as a priest. From the time of the end to 2019, we've been through training. This is a story that is separate to the end of ancient Israel, but it still teaches us of our experience. So we can go into that history and pull out different lines. Just like Acts 27. Or any of those other stories that help to explain our experience. When it comes to the line of the Millerites, there's another line relating particularly to the Sabbath. When was the Sabbath first introduced to the Millerites? Before or after October 22? Before. The Sabbath was introduced to the Millerites before October 22. But what did the leaders do? They rejected it. People had already brought the Sabbath truth to the Millerites before the shut door. So I want to construct another line. 1844, there's a truth brought. This truth is the Sabbath. And it's rejected by all the leaders of the movement. That lines up with 2012. A message of time comes. It's rejected by all the leaders of the movement. 2014 lines up with 1846. This is the fulfillment. 1846. James and Ellen White accept the Sabbath truth. So you find leaders who are accepting this truth. James and Ellen White. And you would mark change in leadership here. Elder Parminda brought the message of time. And now he becomes the leadership. In 2014, it begins to be accepted into the movement. The leader accepts it. Even if no one else does, even if they don't know he's the leader of the movement. 1848 lines up with 2016. By the way, 1848 is the year of political revolution. Particularly throughout Europe. That revolution comes to its symbolic end with the killing of one of the leaders on November 9, 1848. The symbolic end of a revolution against the government. 2016, the revolution has not ended, but in some fashion it has, because Trump is already president. We know we mark the end in 2019. So we're just working through this quite quickly. Then 1850, if you were to watch the presentations in Kenya, December of 2018. Kenya, Elder Parminder's doing a school here. December of 2018. And he lines up 1850 with what date? 2018. The Midnight Cry. The chart. And he makes a point. There's only one chart. It's done with a purpose. Because people are creating all their own charts and bringing in confusion. So he in that school, if you go back and watch it, he gives the evidence of lining up 1850 with 2018. I know we line up 1850 with the Sunday law. Just like we line the baptism up with 9/11. But there are multiple layers in that story. These are the key, the beginning and the end of ancient and modern Israel. Those are the chief applications. But within them there are other stories. Like the training of the priest for 30 years. So this becomes another story. And in this story, it's the Sabbath truth that is the increase of knowledge to the Millerite movement, rejected by the leadership, accepted by the change in leadership, continues to swell until 1850. When you build that model, you have a third application. And that is still the experience of William Miller. Did he ever accept the Sabbath? No. Because the Sabbath relates to the third angel's message. So he never accepts. And when you build this model, and you identify down here, 2019, the shut door, then question, did William Miller die before or after the shut door? Miller dies before the close of probation, before the test. So that may have been a lot of information done quickly, so I'll summarize. We have 4 chief reform lines. Beginning and end of ancient Israel, beginning and end of modern Israel. But then we also have other applications. We worked through the line of Christ, and we saw that at this waymark there is a transition between John and Christ. John dies before the shut door. We looked at the line of the Millerites and we saw the transition of Miller to Snow before the shut door. But then we can see this history, it gives us 3 layers. The first angel dies before the shut door. When we use this third application, William Miller died before the shut door. This is when we understand the Sabbath truth and line it up with the introduction of time setting. The Sabbath was introduced to the movement, rejected by the leaders, the disappointment of those who brought the Sabbath, but they stayed quiet, they waited their time, and then they began to reintroduce the Sabbath. It's not properly accepted until there's a change in leadership, where James and Ellen White accept the Sabbath truth. But the old leadership, William Miller, never accept it. Begins here, 2016 lining up with 1848. You have a further swelling of the Sabbath truth, Ellen White's vision, but you also have the external event, which fits quite neatly when you build this and see the external events. But internally, it's an increase of knowledge. 1848, the vision. Then 1850, go back to Kenya, December of 2018, when Elder Paminda lays out the evidence to connect the midnight cry of 2018 to the chart of 1850. When you do that, you still see the experience of William Miller as he rejects and fights against a message. And when you build that model, Miller dies before the shut door, before the midnight cry is even given, because he dies in this history. When we keep to our primary application, the end of modern Israel, we identified that he never accepted October 22. He claimed only to accept a part. So Miller rejected the second angel. Then we went to first spiritual gifts and saw Miller rejected the third angel's message. That would have helped clarify the confusion and darkness that was in his mind. So Millerite history gives us multiple layers. It agrees with the line of Christ, where the first angel dies before the shut door. But it also tells us another story of how that individual warred against the messages. John won't tell you that story. William Miller will, as he fought against the second and the third angel's message. I want to go to another, our final, the beginning of ancient Israel, the history of Moses. So this is the Alpha history of ancient Israel. Again, it's a history of failure. So you should expect that there are differences. This is why I say the line of Christ is the key. It's the most accurate. I want to take us to a quote. Again, it's in First Spiritual Gifts. Just a few paragraphs down. So this is Christ. Miller writes. Now we'll call it the line of Moses. This is the third. Taking you to a quote. First Spiritual Gifts. 168.1. She says, talking about William Miller, God allowed William Miller to come under the power of Satan and death to have dominion over him. God hid him in the grave, away from those who were drawing him from God. Now she's going to do a compare and contrast. She says, Moses erred just as he was about to enter the promised land. So also I saw that William Miller erred as he was soon to enter the heavenly Canaan, in suffering his influence to go against the truth. So Moses, the first angel, the beginning of ancient Israel. William Miller, the first angel, at the beginning of modern Israel. She takes these two men, first angel, and she's going to compare and contrast them. She's going to say, Moses erred just as he was about to go to the promised land. Miller erred just as he was about to enter the heavenly Canaan. So you can see that juxtaposition. Just like the line of Christ, the time of the end is marked with a birth. The birth of Moses. Moses is born. He's trained. He has an increase of knowledge, which you can see with the burning bush. And he's instructed to go to work. That's all in this first history. John has an increase of knowledge. He's trained. And then he does a work. All before the baptism of Christ. So Moses is born. He has an increase of knowledge. He's trained. And then he does a work. That work is to free his people from Egypt. They must come out. So first angel John, first angel Miller, first angel Moses. They all have an increase of knowledge. They all do a work. Moses calls his people out. That culminates in a type of baptism. He leads them through the waters of the Red Sea. What holds back the Red Sea? If you were to turn to Exodus 14, 21 and 22, it says that the sea was held back by the east wind. And what is the east wind in Bible prophecy? Islam. So Moses is born, increase of knowledge, does a work. He takes his people out of Egypt. They go through the Red Sea, through the waters. It's a type of mass baptism, if I can say that. And it's all in this context of the east wind, which is Islam, which we line up with 9/11. It's also a test, like 1840. After the Red Sea, you find they go to the mountain and there's a tarrying time. Everyone's waiting for Moses. But Moses is in the mountain and it's described as a period of waiting when they were to meditate upon the law and prepare their hearts. So this is a time period of tarrying, of waiting. And in this time period, you can identify the laying of the foundations, which we place between 9/11 and 2014. The foundations being the instructions of God given in the mountain. So they received those instructions. 2012, we mark rejection of the leadership, failure by the leaders. You can line that up with William Miller. You can line that up with this transition to John the Baptist. They're all having difficulties in this time period. But what Moses gives us is the striking of the rock. So wilderness, tarrying time, they're tarrying, they're waiting for Moses. We find apostasy in this time period. Apostasy in the camp. I don't want us to get lost in this. We would need multiple presentations and more board space. But what happens is rebellion. Rebellion to the leadership, rebellion to God. That's the experience that occurs towards the end of this tarrying time. So you have 2012 to 2014. There's been a tarrying time. Towards the end of that tarrying, you have rebellion. But you also have the mistake of Moses. This is when he strikes the rock. So when Elder Jeff takes this story of apostasy in Israel, I want us to be aware of how he's cutting that out of the line, because that belongs in this time period, not over here. So in 2012, Moses strikes the rock. And what does a rock represent? Christ. And who is Christ? The second angel. So who does Moses strike? It's an attack on the second angel. In 2012, he launches an attack on the second angel. Was Elder Parminda already the second angel? Yes. He arrived at 9/11. He's already the second angel. When Elder Jeff attacks him over time setting, he's striking the second angel. The second angel is Christ, represented as a rock. That's the mistake of Moses. And however much Moses repented of that, the results of that were now inevitable. They could not be changed. So if you were to go to Patriarchs and Prophets, from 462.4, and you could continue to read 463.1, 469.3, 481.4, 481.4. So this whole section, but these paragraphs specifically, will teach us some things that I believe are most directly applicable. This is the story of the results of that striking. God tells Moses, take Joshua, lay your hands upon him. He's going to become the leader in your place. Joshua was set apart as the leader of Israel. So you go from Moses to Joshua. So you have here the story of John to Christ. The story here of Miller to Snow. The story here of Moses to Joshua. This all happens before they ever do a work. The disciples have done nothing. The Millerites have done nothing. Joshua has done nothing. They have not even entered Canaan, let alone begin to do the work they were meant to do. The leadership change happens before they do a work. 469.3. This one is significant. We read about John. John said that for Christ to fulfill his mission, John must die. 469.3. God had declared that Moses was not to lead the congregation of Israel into Canaan. And the pleading of Moses could not reverse this sentence. Moses knew that he must die. What did Moses know? Moses knew that he must die. So there is a transition from Moses to Joshua. That all happens before Canaan. Before, I'll be more specific, before the Jordan. Moses knew that he must die. He committed the charge of the people to Joshua. Joshua is now the acknowledged leader of Israel. During the sojourn in the wilderness, he had acted as prime minister to Moses. So they have worked closely together. But now comes a time period where the Prime Minister, the person down here, becomes the acknowledged leader. And Moses died in the land of Moab. Before they cross the Jordan, before they go to work. And Joshua is told, as I was with Moses, so I will be with you. They crossed the Jordan under the leadership of Joshua. And then they're going to prepare and then do a work. Begins with the taking of Jericho. It's all done in the strength of God. Someone asked a question when I was in South Sudan. And it's not a question that I like to answer. It's not something I like to hear. Someone asked me, Elder Jeff has to go to heaven because he's the first angel. The first angel always does. I want us to be challenged how we use these symbols. We've gone through our three reform lines that explain to us ours. Christ, this end of ancient Israel, is the history of success most closely aligned. Moses and the Millerites, histories of failure. So you start to encounter differences and problems in their movement. But they still teach us. We've taken all three. If you can follow the board work, you'll see three strips as we've connected their stories. End of ancient Israel, the history of Christ. That's really easy to see. You can't move these waymarks. Prior to the testing of the first group, the leadership changes. So based on that witness alone, you know where Moses changes to Joshua. And when someone wants to tell you Moses is spearing someone over here, Moses is killing people, apostates over here, you have to question, where's Moses? Go back to your reform line. So first of all, we did Christ. We identified the transition happens before the shut door. John dies before the shut door. Then we went to the Millerites. We traced the Millerites. Two groups. First group called, as symbolized by the 10 virgins. So you know the 10 virgins are one story, one group. You don't have two groups of people like priests and Levites. The 10 virgins, the wise, are one group. And their stories from 1798 to 1844. Taught, tarrying time, midnight cry, bridegroom is coming, go out to meet him, shut door. And when you construct that line, the transition of leadership again connects. John to Christ, Miller to Snow. Then we described the experience of Miller. This primary reform line teaches us that he does not die. He lives long after the close of probation. But he never accepted the midnight cry. And he wars against the truth. There's two other explanations of William Miller. We went to a second. First spiritual gifts. Where she explains to us how he rejected the second angel. And therefore he rejected the third angel. The third angel should have helped explain his misunderstandings of the second. In the midnight cry message, what did we teach? We explained thoroughly 2012 as a waymark and what that failure meant. We taught repeating patterns. Everything that we taught that was part of our third angel's message, if he was willing, would have explained 2012 to Elder Jeff. But he rejected it. He rejected the second angel. He rejected the third angel. That's two applications. And then we went to this other reform line that tells us the story of the Sabbath. The introduction of that into the movement. Lined it up with the introduction of time setting that led to the midnight cry. When we constructed that line, we saw William Miller's objection to the Sabbath, which existed all the way through, and he dies before the midnight cry is given, back in the same dispensation. So within here, John to Christ, Miller to Snow, Moses to Joshua. Here, John dies, Moses dies, Miller dies. The point is this: we take on these symbols, like first angel, and we place them on an individual. But they're only one symbol. On the line of the priests, the first angel is long gone. It's a symbol that someone picks up, carries for a period of time, and puts down. In 1988, was Elder Jeff the first angel? No. In 2020, is Elder Jeff the first angel? No. You take a symbol, you carry it for a period of time, and you put it down. The problem is, you can take on another symbol. There are other lines that show Elder Jeff, not just targeting him, but Future for America, what they represent. One is the line of Christ, Judas, those that leave before. One is the issue in heaven, a fight over leadership, the equality of God and Christ. There are other symbols. But what people are struggling with is identifying Elder Jeff as the first angel and saying, therefore, how can he be wrong? That first angel died before the shut door. All the lines that God has given us that opened up here prove that. Now it's up to you to decide what death means. Because we do not teach literal and literal. We teach literal and spiritual. Literal and symbolic. So death does not equal literal death. So you have to decide. The first angel died, and what that means. I would suggest people that follow a dead man are dead themselves. Dead men walking. It's not safe to follow a blind man, and a dead man is blind. Now I'll remind you, I call him Elder Jeff because I still respect the man. But people are losing their salvation because of how they understand him. That doesn't leave me with a choice except to explain to you what the lines teach. And what the lines teach is that Elder Jeff does not lead this movement. Don't mean to bring in his morality. But if these lines are salvational, if everything that we have is built upon them, then people have to decide for themselves. Do they want to side with the second leaders who teach based on the lines, or do they want to separate from the movement, put their faith in the first leader, who all the lines demonstrate is a dead man, and think that he will save you? The reform lines are all consistent. They tell the same story. Whether it's Moses, John, or Miller, every single one of them had mistakes in their message. Every single one of them brought in Laodicean ideas. The second angel had to fix their mistakes. Elder Jeff teaches the Time of the End magazine was perfect, and that we do not treat it with enough respect. I don't know how to satisfy people. The Time of the End magazine was a formalization of the message for the priests. I respect it. It's significant. As much as I would respect sitting at the feet of John the Baptist as he tells us about the coming Messiah and the earthly kingdom he's about to set up. I don't lose respect. We still respect him. But we understand God allowed for mistakes in that message. Mistakes that we must correct. So we cannot be shaken when Elder Parminder stands up and says what we did back here was really lazy methodology. And there were mistakes. Because there were mistakes in Miller and John and Moses. That doesn't in any way suggest that the movement or the first angel was not led of God in that history. But we have to accept that we can't keep those mistakes. We have to learn to do better. So these lines teach us two things. First of all, who to follow. It's not the first angel. If you think Elder Jeff is the first angel today, 31 years ago, Reform Lines told you otherwise, which is why he no longer teaches them. So we need to know who to follow, and second, accept the corrections they make to the message. When you start to see the message being refined, we're not destroying the Time of the End magazine. Christ did not destroy the message of John. But he had to refine it. All those who don't like that process, they fall away. Judas, he died too. John died. Judas died. The only safety is to follow what the lines teach us. If everyone in this movement had have accepted what these lines taught, we would never have had a single shaking. September last year would never have happened. Path of the Just would never have left. Tree of Life would never have left. No one would leave this movement if they understood and accepted what was opened up in 1989. And there are people in this movement who are about to leave because they don't accept what these lines teach. That is the power of the reform lines. And in this time of crisis, it's why I find it so hard to base a message on anything else. This is what will keep you safe. So in conclusion, leadership changed. 2014. We have 3 witnesses. First angel died prior to the close of probation. Wherever you want to mark that, and however you want to define that, you can no longer follow a dead man. If you kneel with me, we'll close in prayer. Dear Father in heaven, we know that you have led this movement for over 30 years now. Some of these things are hard to say. We love the people, Lord. There is no animosity towards them. And yet when we see people lose their salvation because they fail to understand what these lines teach us, how you are leading us, what is safe to believe, what is not safe to believe, I pray that we will find ourselves with a firm foundation, that we'll be firm in the message that you have designed to teach us. I pray, Lord, that these reform lines will hold us. This is a line of success, just as was the line of Christ. This movement will complete its work with or without any one of us. It must happen, but we desire to be a part of that. We desire our families and our loved ones to be part of that. For their sakes, may we be faithful. May we be strong in these things. I pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.